Hello everyone! In this video we're going to show you a few World War II artifacts and tell you the story of how they were found. Let's cut right to the chase. The T-70 tank. For 65 years, the T-70 tank lay at the bottom of the river in the deep mud near the village of Mayskaya, near the city of Volgograd. It was 16 years ago that the searchers managed to find it and send it for restoration. The T-70 is a light tank of the Second World War, whose task was to escort infantry. As the first stage of restoration, the tank was washed and was on display as a monument in the city of Volgograd. But now, with the help of the museum reserved the Battle of Stalingrad, there is an opportunity to return it to its former appearance and restore it to its working condition. It turned out to be a rare type of T-70B tank. Only 40 of them were produced in the Gorky factory. After lifting the tank from the river, bandages, shoes, fragments of bones were found inside. Probably the crew was killed, but unfortunately, it wasn't possible to determine the identity of the crew. The crew of this vehicle consisted of two people, a mechanic driver at the bottom and a commander in the turret who performed all functions, commanding, firing, and loading. The longest and the most difficult stage of the restoration is over now. All that remains is to assemble and install the parts. More than 70% of the tank has kept its original parts. A number of elements, rollers and tracks were lost. The original parts were searched all over the country. The missing parts were made according to the factory drawings. This tank took part in the Battle of Stalingrad. According to historians, it was decommissioned in December 1942. A soldier with a letter. In May 2023, searchers from the city of St. Petersburg discovered the remains of a Red Army soldier. Near him, a protective cuirass and a shield from a Maxim machine gun, pierced by shrapnel, were found. And there was another soldier nearby. He had a medal for the defense of Leningrad, a straight razor, an anointing oil, a mouthpiece, a spoon, and a small book, a prayer book as we thought. And as soon as the book was opened, it turned out to be a letter with all the soldiers' data in it. It was a miracle. It has happened many times before that everything rots and bones almost disappear in dense soil. But it is the paper, not protected by anything, that is preserved. The archive immediately identified the soldier. Volkhonsky Vasily Sisoevich, born in 1915, drafted into the army from the Leningrad city in 1941. He was a machine gunner and died in 1943. The searchers also managed to find his relatives, and this is a photo of Vasily. A German box. A few years ago, a young man was digging on his property. He hit something metal with his shovel. As he dug, he saw a large box that was locked. With the help of the shovel, the box was immediately opened, and the man was in disbelief. There were the belongings of a German officer inside the box. There was the uniform of the captain of the medical service and his personal belongings. Sorting through the things, the guy found 2 bottles of Jamaican rum and 2 boxes of cigars, as well as a wallet with change and paper bills. The personal ID of the owner of the box was in his jacket pocket. It is remarkable that all of these items were in perfect condition, as there was no evidence of moisture inside. It was impossible to find out who this captain was and for what reason he had buried all of his belongings. Probably during the Red Army offensive, the German officer couldn't take so many things with him and decided to bury them in the hope that he would return soon. But this never happened, and the chest remained in the ground for many decades. The young man donated everything he found to the local museum. From the bottom of the Black Sea in the area of the Crimean Bridge, the first of the found Il-2 attack aircrafts from the Second World War was lifted. Remains of the pilots were not found in the cockpit. In total, the search group discovered 3 Soviet Il-2s at the bottom of the Black Sea. They are preserved in satisfactory condition and lie at a depth of about 10 meters in the area of the Kerch Strait. The search group will now establish the identity of the Il-2 to aviation units, the names of the crew members and the date of their death. Probably the planes were shut down in 1943 during the Kerch-Eltingen landing operation, carried out with the aim of liberating the Kerch Peninsula. And here is another Il-2 found near Novorossiysk. They were looking for it for 2 years. Divers work at the place of discovery. They're trying to clear the stormtrooper of silt and get to the engine. This will help identify the aircraft by number. The work is complicated by the fact that the Il-2 lies upside down. In addition, it's impossible to get the remains of the pilot to establish his identity. More than 36,000 Il-2s were produced during the war. The Il-2 was nicknamed the Flying Tank because of its reliability and effective attacks during the Second World War. The Germans called it Black Death. Archaeologists and divers will continue to work near the Crimea and Taman. Researchers are convinced that more than 2,000 objects of the Great Patriotic War are located in this area. In 2019, in the Prokhorovsky district near Belgorod, a search group discovered the German tank Panzerkampfwagen 4. The tank was hit during the Grand Battle of the Kursk Bulge in August 1943. Apparently, the ammunition exploded inside the tank and the hull was completely destroyed. The combat vehicle was of sand color, which indicated the arrival of this tank from the African Corps. The Germans were in a hurry to bring the tank into battle that didn't even have time to apply a camouflage color. 722, this number is clearly visible on the turret. It makes it possible to establish the entire combat path of the tank and the crew names. Despite the fact that such a tank was mass-produced and not unique, only a few remain now. It's impossible to assemble the whole machine from the found parts, but many elements can be used by restorers to recreate other similar tanks. Shortly before this, a turret from such a Panzerkampfwagen 4 was found near Staria Skol city in excellent condition. The notorious Sychovka became the scene of fierce battles in 1942. For both the Red Army and the Wehrmacht, the Battle of Rjev was a huge loss. A huge amount of abandoned equipment remained on the battlefields, but the country needed metal and all captured weapons, including tanks, were sent for remelting. But one German Panzerkampfwagen 3 was lucky. He drowned in a swamp and was raised only in 2002. The tank was in excellent condition, the native color was perfectly preserved. There was a full ammunition, a machine gun, crew personal belongings and MP-40 assault rifles inside. Unfortunately, the fate of this tank is tragic. They planned to illegally sell it to Belarus. The tower and caterpillars were detained at the border while trying to export under the guise of scrap metal and after some time were sent to Moscow Museum. But the hull was nevertheless taken out and is currently exhibited in the Museum of Minsk with a fake turret. In February 2020, the tower of the legendary T-34 was taken out of the ground in the Belgorod region. The tank turret with number 31 was discovered by local residents in the village of Yakovleva. The search group of the Ognenaya Duga Club and the police arrived at the place of the find. After that, the turret of the tank was lifted by a crane from the ground, though without the upper part where the hatches were located. It looks like there was an explosion of the ammunition and the turret was blown up by an explosion. This is evidenced by the absence of the upper part of the turret. This could happen from an enemy shell hit. or the crew themselves could blow the T-34 up so that it wouldn't go to the enemy. After the swamp mud was washed away from the turret, it was discovered that there was no shutter or sight on the tank gun. Therefore, the searchers came to the conclusion that the tank was blown up by the crew during the forces' retreat in March 1943, when the Soviet troops had to leave Belgorod, which was liberated almost a month before.